critical thinking is an essential skill that is not only valuable in your life, in your personal life, but also in your career, personal life, community, anywhere you can apply it. And you can apply it anywhere. You can apply it in making small decisions, shopping at the store. You can apply it in making medium-sized decisions, buying a car, buying a new house. And you can apply it in larger decisions or more systemic decisions, such as career. So what is critical thinking? Critical thinking is, it's right in the word itself. Anything that is critical, critical mass, critical recovery, critical business collapse, it means that you're in dire straits, right? It's a very important type of thinking. It's a deeper thinking, goes beyond just the surface, and it takes a lot of work, time, patience, and preparation and practice in order to get it right. So what is it? Well, to break it down, to summarize right at the beginning, it is good thinking, preferably good thinking, objective thinking. You're trying to take your emotions, your prejudices, your biases, and as much as you can out of the picture. We get these preconceived notions and biases and prejudices built into us, maybe by our teachers, our parents, society, the movies we watch, the environment that we live in, the friends and people we associate with, okay? Oftentimes we are exposed to a very small segment of society, a subset of all society. We don't see it all, and oftentimes we jump to conclusions. We make decisions that are very surface oriented. We might make decisions based on anecdotal evidence. Well, that happened to me one time, so it must be true to everybody all times. Nothing could be further from the truth. And if you start a sentence by saying people are, young people are, old people are, Democrats are, Republicans are, you're getting yourself into a lot of trouble. Because in each one of those cases, you're dealing with millions of people, individuals. If you have a family, you can understand even within your own family, the great difference from one family member to another. I am considerably different from my sister, and my sister's from me and our other sister, and so forth, right? So there's not everybody's the same. You can't just, and it's easy to do that. It's comfortable to do that. It's dangerous to do that. It's not very good critical thinking, or you're not a very good critical thinker in doing that. But also it's oftentimes done in cases of propaganda or political scenarios where you want to defeat your enemy, right? You know, all of these people of this particular party are all the same. They're all a basket of deplorables, right? Not true. Because again, you're dealing with millions of people, okay? So you have to think objectively, you have to think honestly, you have to think with some courage, courageously. You have to be thorough, rigorous as best you can, meaning that you don't just take one example as the end all and the cure all, or, you know, in this case, this happened to me, so therefore this is true not only for me all the time, but for everybody all the time. Nothing could be further from the truth. That is weak sense thinking, not strong sense thinking. Strong thinking entails discipline. It entails a stepping back, being a little skeptical, being, I don't know if that's true. And then if you're not sure, especially if it's a complex issue, such as the political environment, the economic environment, the scientific environments, global warming and things like that, those are very, very, very complex issues. And maybe because they're so complex, people don't want to delve into them. They don't want to see that there's so much complexity there. They just want to push a particular opinion or agenda, or they're not comfortable with the complexity, so they just try to ignore it all. And this is what people do oftentimes. People have been known for, you know, siding with a particular view that has been proven to be wrong hundreds, thousands of times, over and over and over and over again. Research has shown it, one experiment after another, data sets, one data set after another, proves that what this person thinks is wrong or has been proven wrong time and again, but then that person says, well, I don't care. It's been right twice out of 10,000 times. I want to believe it because I'm invested in it emotionally or whatever, right? So this is what you're battling when you're dealing with critical thinking. Well, let's take this is a 5-minute video. It's got about 2 million views, which is quite unusual for an academic video. Most academic videos might have a couple hundred views at most, maybe 1,000 or so, or a couple thousand. But this one is pretty good, and it stood the test of time, and it does a pretty good job. And I'm going to be stopping it on occasion because there may be some things that aren't clear or some things that have to be emphasized. Okay. If you just play it, if you just sit here and play it for 5 minutes and don't know anything about critical thinking, you'll get a little bit of education, but not a lot. Learning takes a lot more than just watching a 5-minute video without inquiry. You know, if you don't ask questions, if you don't stop and pause and is that true? What does that mean? Can that be clarified? What is this connected to something else that I heard earlier, right? So true learning requires a lot of time, patience, and reflection. Okay. So anyways, let's get into it.
Give someone a fish and they'll eat that day. Teach them how to catch a fish and they'll never go hungry. Proverbs like this remind us how learning skills helps to move us towards self-reliance. This is never more true than with critical thinking. Memorize the solution to a problem and you may master that particular problem. Improve your critical thinking and you'll give yourself the tools to create your own effective solutions to a multitude of unfamiliar problems.
Now that's the issue. On the left here, my left, this is pretty much school. Maybe not college so much, but this is school. You've got one answer in your math class, your science class, your history class. It's in the back of the book. Look it up, right? Based on a particular formula, based on particular methodologies and so forth. But sometimes those methodologies are not objective or they're not absolute. They're just a way of coming to a solution. And depending on the application of that solution, like PEMDAS, right? The order of operations. Depending on the application or the need for solution, that PEMDAS or that concept, that answer set, I guess we could say, works. Sometimes it works well, but it's problematic. It's not an end all and a cure all. Okay. And school oftentimes will come across, and what you're learning in school, it will come across as, well, this is the answer. There's no other answer. There's no reason to question. We're done. This is absolute. This is definitive. This is finite. We're done, right? Unfortunately, in the real world, this is more like the real world, right? Even history is not objective. A lot of students think, oh, all you have to do is, record history as it happened. This happened at this time, on this day, and in this way by these people, blah, blah, blah. But it depends on who's recording the history, right? When Columbus discovered America, and many say, of course, that it was discovered some time ago, before Columbus came, of course, or at least boats from Africa and parts of Europe had rested upon Americans or North American shores, right? And that's not where Columbus was. He was not in North America. He was in the Indies there, what are called the West Indies, right? So the solution is that Columbus discovered America. He did not. There was a certain set of people. There was a group of people that lived there, the Arawaks, right? Maybe they already knew that America was there. Weren't they living there? Didn't they know that there was some land there? They call it America, right? Because it was named after an Italian map maker, Amerigo Vespucci, right? It was named after just a famous guy. Names sound good. Let's call it America. So there's a lot that we allegedly know about history that we think is just fact-based, but it's not. There's opinion in history. There's opinion for sure, and you know this, right? In politics, there's opinion. In economics, there's opinions all over the place, right? So the problem is that the more you study things, the more you realize that there's more problems than you could have imagined, right? Just like climate change, that's a hot button topic, right? There's a myriad of inputs into climate. Is the Earth getting warmer? Certainly. Do humans have Are humans contributing to that warming of the planet? Certainly. But there are so many other factors involved. It's impossible to tell exactly to what extent humans are participating in the warming of the climate, right? And even if Americans, who seem to be the most concerned, do what they seem to be wanting to do, spending X amount of dollars, trillions of dollars, and coming up with certain fixes to help tame that temperature, bring it down a bit, you still got the majority of the rest of the world, China and India, not caring. So, to what extent are things going to be fixed? Because of the fact that only a very small percentage of those on the planet are concerned about climate change in the long run, right? So anyways, that's another issue. But anyways, keep in mind that critical thinking it's very open-ended. It's not easy. If you get into good critical thinking, you're going to find that there's probably, and many a scientist has said this is good, there's probably more questions than answers, right? Stephen Hawking said, I love science because the more answers I get, the more questions there are. And I can just keep going forever, right? So I guess, he found that thrilling. A lot of people don't find continual growing, expanding chaos that much fun, but to each his own.
Problems. Critical thinking refers to a diverse range of intellectual skills and activities concerned with evaluating information as well as our own thought in a disciplined way. When we're willing and able to examine our own capability as thinkers, acknowledging problems and weaknesses, this can help us refine our thought processes so that we learn to think and assess information in a more comprehensive way that increases our ability to identify and reject false ideas and ideologies.
All right, that's good. There's a lot to unpack there. Now, critical thinking basically comes in 3 steps if you want to simplify it. To make it, and that's normally what you have to do. Don't keep it simplified if it's complex, and this is complex. But the first thing you want to do is kind of get an overarching feel or understanding of what it is that you're dealing with, right? And that's why you go to the most general understanding. Just like when I teach the Constitution, there's basically 6 elements or 6 things that the Constitution does at the most general, elemental level, right? Where do we start with our education? Elementary school. And then, we have primary, then we move to secondary, and finally higher education and graduate school if we want to keep learning more and more, learning how to think better and better, right? So anyways, at the most fundamental level, you have critical thinking is about critical thinking. First of all, first and foremost, define it, right? If we're going to learn something, the first thing we want to do is define critical thinking. Critical thinking is nothing more than going a little deeper, right? Define a better, more pure, more accurate solution. Sounds pretty good. Step 2, can we kind of summarize the parts of critical thinking? Sure. First thing you do, get a problem. Car's not working. What do? Hook it up to an analyzer. So I analyze, and then it gives me information. So I combine that new information with my existing information. And if that's not enough, I have to look up some more information. So and they've got this kind of out of order. And some of these are just synonyms for the other things. Synthesizing, right? Analyze, synthesize, and then judge. I've got to make a judgment. How do I fix the car? What are the solutions, right? So this analyzing, conceptualizing, defining, right? Conceptualizing, sorry. Defining, examining, that's a part of analyzing, right? And then you're trying to find the solution. So you infer. What do you infer by that? What are you saying? What do you think the possible solution is, right? Listening is also another way of analyzing or gathering information, questioning, then using your reasoning to come to some type of judgment. So they've got all this kind of just, it's like a collage, just definitions or words thrown out there. So hopefully that organizes it a little bit. But in the middle part of the graph here, we've got evaluation of information, as I said, in a disciplined way, keyword. And that's another aspect of critical thinking that is essential, discipline, right? Evaluating our thought. We haven't talked too much about that. A little bit, right? What thoughts of mine are getting in the way of finding the most pure, true, honest solutions, right? Do I have some preconceived notions, prejudices, and biases, and blah, 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 that are getting in the way of me seeing really what's going on, right? Help us refine our thought process, think and assess information more comprehensively. And as Einstein said, you only have so much time. So at some point, you just got to put the books down, come up with a solution, and go with it. You can't work on something forever. Like many an author has said, I'm never really finished. I've just met a deadline, right? Meaning that I could probably just keep writing forever, refining and refining, refining. But, I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm just going to write one book my entire life instead of 50 or 100. More able to identify and reject false ideas and ideologies, right? That comes in the evaluating of our thought, our biases and prejudices. But also, let's not forget the biases and prejudices of others, right?
Ideologies. Critical thinking isn't just thinking a lot. The person may spend a great deal of intellectual energy defending a flawed position or pursuing a question that actually needs reformulating before progress can begin. If they never examine possible flaws and biases behind their approach, that's not thinking critically. We must want to be better at thinking, to pinpoint and minimize any biasing influence on our thought from culture and upbringing, to seek out and be guided by knowledge and evidence that fits with reality, even if it refutes our cherished beliefs. Indeed, when we think critically, beliefs tend not to be cherished, but held on the understanding that if they're shown to be unfounded, a change of position is the most appropriate response.
There it is, right? So you have to think through, you have to be brave, you have to be courageous, you have to be mature, you have to be an adult, you have to be strong, you have to be a leader, maybe even. And I often, when I'm teaching this, I often think of that story about the king's clothes, right? I don't know if that's the name of the story, but there's a little boy who notices that the king isn't wearing anything. And the king's always walking around town with no clothes on. But he believes he's wearing the finest clothes in the world, maybe. And I forget exactly the source or why he believes that. But anyways, and of course, nobody wants to say anything because they don't want their heads chopped off. So finally, one day, the little kid goes, "No, no, no, no. The king is naked. The king is wearing no clothes." So you have to be that little child. Sometimes you have to be maybe not naive, but innocent, I guess, in seeing things as clearly as possible. Innocent, honest, moral, ethical, brave, clean, reverent. Sounds like Boy Scout, Girl Scout, right? You got to have some character. If you're a good critical thinker, best critical thinkers have the best character. You don't want to cheat. You don't want to lie, backstab, steal, deceive, misinform, so forth and so on. It's difficult. Somebody once said that being a good critical thinker is part academic, PhD, part professor, part priest, and part child, right? So you have to have all those elements involved, the best of the best, right, in order to be a good critical thinker.
Critical thinkers cultivate an attitude of curiosity and eagerness to widen their perspective and broaden their knowledge, and they're willing to do the work required to keep themselves properly informed about a subject.
That's the key. I'm going to back that a little bit. So, yeah, curiosity is important, right? That's at the foundation. If you're not curious, and then on top of that, you got to be wanting to solve the problem ethically and morally. You want to be just, not unjust. The unjust can take all kinds of shortcuts. They can use propaganda and lies and misinformation till the cows come home, right? No problem. But the best critical thinkers, and this is what most employers want. Most employers don't want cheaters, liars, stealers, thieves, right? Thieves. Curiosity, perspective, knowledge, right? You got to be willing to do the work to keep yourself properly informed. There are keywords throughout. I've taught this many times. When you're reading something, you're always looking for keywords and phrases, right? So here is the key word is willing to do the work, right? And keeping yourself properly informed. Key phrase there, properly informed.
About a subject. They recognize that explanations must actually explain and be testable to be worthy of serious consideration, and that legitimate theories clearly define the circumstances in which they'll concede defeat. Critical thinking embraces skepticism. Skepticism doesn't mean an indiscriminate rejection of ideas, as some mistakenly believe. It refers to doubting and suspending our judgment about claims with which we're presented, so that we don't simply accept claims which might be unjustified, but first take the time to understand them, examining the reasoning and possible assumptions and biases behind them.
Yeah, you're not a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, right? Everything isn't always, a skeptic. A skeptic is usually, I don't believe that. They just kind of indiscriminately say, I don't believe that. I don't believe your team won today. I don't believe that the earth is round. I don't believe that the sky is blue and the grass is green. I don't believe that. You may believe that according to certain theories that have come forth, but I know otherwise. I know that the earth is flat, the sky is green, and the seas are purple or whatever. Right? There's people out there like that. So you do want to wait a minute. Some people are just ready to jump in hook, line, and sinker. Well, that supports my biases and prejudices, right? I'm just gonna boom, jump right on that, even though there's very little truth, or you didn't even check to see whether or not what was being said is valid or true. And time again, people will find out that something that is being said that they support is not true or valid, but they just ignore it. I don't care. I hate that person. What is said about that person here totally supports what I feel and think, mostly feel and think about that person. Therefore, I will go with that judgment. He, she is innocent. I'm not going to even look at that because I don't like them. I don't like their kind. whatever the bias or prejudice is, right? Don't be like that. Don't be a bad human.
Reasoning behind factual claims should be based in sound, consistent logic, not on emotions and social pressure, because the truth value of factual claims isn't determined by the emotion that accompanies them, or the fact that they may be believed by certain social groups. Sometimes people try to persuade us that reason has no value, but that's an untenable position. Arguing against reason is cutting off the branch on which you sit, using the very thing you're dismissing in order to construct a case against it. Reason has an intrinsic role in the decisions and judgments we make as we negotiate our way through life, whether they be momentous or trivial. If a particular line of reasoning is flawed, what will increase our understanding? Dismissing the value of reason or looking honestly at the flaws? A lack of respect for reason or evidence, or any number of obstructive character traits, will sabotage one's capacity for critical thought.
There you go. Lack of respect for reason, intellectual arrogance, as I said before. I'm just going to go with what I believe, what I feel, what I've always known. I don't care. I don't care about you. I don't care about the truth. I'm just going to, that's what I want. That's what I want it to be. Right? Unwillingness to listen. Sometimes that's just laziness. Sometimes it's your bias or prejudice or haters. LeBron, greatest player ever. No, I'm not going to listen. Greatest player ever is MJ. Intellectual laziness, lack of respect for evidence.
One of the biggest barriers to critical thinking is an unwillingness to see complex issues in anything other than black and white terms. If one sees only two options when more exist, this constitutes a false dichotomy. Consciousness is often presented as something that's either an eternal immaterial entity or reducible and identical to brain states, when in fact there are various other positions. Many divide people into those who accept evolution and those who believe in specific gods, when these categories are not mutually exclusive.
And I've read books written by theists and scientists that say there's a considerable overlapping in many areas of between the two philosophies. But there is a difference because science is based in fact. It's the observation of fact, and theology is more belief in things not seen. So empirical evidence, science is empirical evidence based, and most theology is based in faith. Belief in things not seen, not necessarily empirical evidence, but nevertheless, there are some commonalities. Or individuals have come forth and written many books about commonalities between the two concepts or belief systems, I guess we could say, right? So the thing is that an eternal immaterial entity, yeah. So you really have to be cautious, have to think things through. You have to be skeptical. Wait a minute. That doesn't sound quite right. Oh, P. Diddy is in the news, and there was a video of Mike Tyson taking his hand and moving it away, right? But it had nothing to do with any sexual overtones, right? What he was doing was, and you could hear Tyson say that, yes, it is in the bling or the Benjamins, the bling and the Benjamins. And the reason why he grabbed his hand is because he had like a gold watch or something showing that he had some bling and Benjamins in his life, right? So, and there was many people, most people. Occasionally, I saw people catching on what was going on there, but again, it was for clicks and views probably more than anything else, and it wasn't adding anything to the conversation or to solution or greater understanding as to what was going on. Mostly for clicks and views, right? And the intent was, here's Tyson, throwing away his hand, because of the current indictments, right? So good critical thinking. It's good all around, from the smallest to the largest issues.
When these categories are not mutually exclusive, if we think in false dichotomies, we'll tend to draw false conclusions. For example, by judging that if option A is false, option B must be true. We may also misrepresent others by wrongly assuming that if they don't hold attitude X, they must hold attitude Y.
That's what I was going to say. Another thought hit me and I lost it for a moment, just came back. That has to do with, like for instance, you're either for our troops or against our troops. No matter what they do, no matter where they go, no matter where they're assigned, you're either for them or against them. There's no gray area. There's no questioning. There's no qualifying, quantifying, specifying, right? What about if your troops go off and do something that you think is a heinous crime? I definitely support my troops. I love, I served, my father served, his father served, many people in our family have served. So, I support our troops. And that's fine. You can support them at all times, but you don't necessarily support what they're doing because our troops are not in control of what they do. Their superiors are in control of what they do. So you can say, I support my troops at all times, but I don't always support what their superiors are asking them to do. Oh, voila, right? And that's critical thinking. That's really thinking it through. That's going deeper. That's not being lazy, right? Lazy thinking, sloppy thinking. Do you think employers want that? Do you think anybody in your family, when good decisions are needed, they want that, right? At any level, small, medium, or large, you want good critical thinking skills.
Black and white thinking often reflects an underlying reluctance or refusal to deal with the uncertainty that results from complexity and an absence of definite answers.
The chaos.
The leaping to flawed conclusions because you can't tolerate the ambiguity of not knowing is not about truth or curiosity, but comfort. The critical
comfort, and I've used that word a couple times.
Critical thinker can handle uncertainty, preferring to be aware of their own areas of ignorance, and they can wait for valid evidence and evidence-based answers. Critical thinking provides each of us with the keys for unlocking our own intellectual independence, leaving us willing and able to explore and solve problems for ourselves. It moves us away from rash conclusions, mystification, and a reluctance to question received wisdom, authority, and tradition. It moves us towards intellectual discipline, the clear expression of ideas, and the acceptance of personal responsibility for our own thinking. Communities in which individuals are eager to acquire and apply the best knowledge and reason in all fields and willing to acknowledge and correct flaws in their own thinking are better equipped to create more profoundly effective solutions to the challenges we face in living and living together.
That's a biggie, right? So that's what you want to do. You want more effective, more sound, longer lasting decisions, because if a decision is based in good critical thinking, it's been rigorously gone over. You know that what the solution that you've used, you come up with, has been gone over rigorously. You and maybe many others have thought about it, thought it through, contemplated, asked questions, experimented, run some data, and so forth and so on. So that's essential, right? And notice it says in all fields, willing to acknowledge and correct flaws, better equipped to create more profoundly effective solutions to the challenges we face in living and living together.
In living and living together. When we teach and encourage critical thinking, we empower individual lives and invest in our collective future.
There's some more key phrases. Empower individual lives, invest in collective future, right? It's about the collective. I think of like the board. No, not the Borg. That's a different. That's a different thing. But anyways, so that's a pretty good introduction. Should you take a critical thinking class? Yes. Just one? No. I think you should probably have a couple critical thinking classes in high school and a couple in college, at least. In most cases, many cases, only one critical thinking class is required, or maybe two. Not enough. That you're just barely encroaching upon the understanding of work that you have to do in order to be a good critical thinker. But anyways, that's it. That's it for now. Thanks for coming out.